Assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum. It is Mubarakah. And today we are starting our series on Ramadan and fasting. So between now and the start of Ramadan, we have 30 days, almost exactly 30 days. So today is March 1st, and inshallah, Ramadan will be starting around about April 1st. We're not going to get into moon wars. We're just saying around about April 1st, Ramadan starts. So over the next 4 weeks, I am going to be coming live every Tuesday to talk about the science and the Sunnah of fasting. Intermittent fasting is all the rage these days. And in Islam, it's actually been the rage since the beginning of time, right? Because Allah says in the Quran that He has prescribed for us fasting as He has prescribed it for those before us. So we know that fasting gives us great spiritual benefits. Of all of the things that Allah has given us the privilege to worship Him with, He promises us that the reward of fasting is only with Him. And so we can expect an immense reward in this regard. But what is the science behind fasting? That's what I want to talk to you today. That's what we're going to talk about today and every Tuesday, right? So when we talk about the science, I like to talk about it as the science and the Sunnah. And sometimes you will hear me refer to it as the science of the Sunnah, right? But we know that fasting is obligatory. So today I am going to break it down. We're going to start from level 1. What exactly is fasting and what are the physiological benefits of fasting? And how does that transfer into our dry fast of Ramadan? So if you are just joining me, my name is Mubarakah Ibrahim, and I am your health and happiness coach. If you believe, like we do, that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined, and the weakness of one weakens them all, and the strengthening of one strengthens them all, then welcome! You have found your tribe. You are here with us where we talk about food, faith, and fitness, where they're all intertwined. So, salamu alaikum and ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, today we are talking about fasting. What exactly is fasting? So, let's start right at base level. Fasting, right, according to the research, so I'm talking to you from a biological and scientific perspective, right? So just as a disclaimer, this is not a religious lecture, okay? Just as a disclaimer. So I am not going to specifically talk about the rules around Islamic fasting. I am going to talk to you about the science of fasting. This is my favorite time of the year, not just because fasting is such a wonderful tool for us to worship Allah, right? It's not just because Ramadan is coming. I love this time of year as a health and wellness coach because it is exactly the time in which everything that I hold dear to my heart and to my personal health and well-being all intertwines. It is a time when Allah Himself has intertwined physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, right? So if at any other time of the year, Muslims may say, oh, well, worshiping Allah is more important than trying to get a workout in, or, oh, I don't see how, physical fitness has anything to do with your iman, right? When we make these constant excuses, whether we do it verbally or we do it in our actions, Ramadan comes and say, your physical well-being is directly tied to your spiritual well-being, right? So Allah made fasting obligatory upon us so that we can obtain taqwa, right? He specifically tells us in the Quran that this is the reason why he has prescribed fasting. But in addition to that, there is physical benefits to fasting that makes us better human beings. So, what does that have to do with Ramadan? It has so much to do with Ramadan, because in order for us to fast in the way that Allah has prescribed for us to fast, we have to take into account our physical well-being, right? We have to take this into account. So when we talk about fasting, let's talk about the science, right? What is fasting exactly? Right? So if I know, so I was born and raised Muslim, alhamdulillah. And I remember, and I did this with my children as well. I'm a mom as well. And when kids are little, right, they want to fast Ramadan, but you know, a 5-year-old can't really fast for 16 hours. And so you would not wake them up for suhoor, but then wake them up for breakfast in the morning and say, you have to fast until lunch, right? Right? Is that fasting? Alhamdulillah, it gets them used to fasting, but physiologically, it's not fasting. It's just for them to actually create the mindset around fasting, right? And then as they get older, we say, okay, you eat breakfast and then you fast until dinner time. Right? Sometimes that's 10 hours, right? For a 9-year-old, that's a long time. For a 12-year-old, that's a long time. And then they get to the point where you say, okay, you can wake up for suhoor and now you fast until iftar, right? That is when the real fasting occurs, right? So we build up our kids' tolerance both mentally and physically to fasting Ramadan. Now, when we look at the science of fasting, fasting is considered, when they look at the research, if someone says, I want to research what fasting is or what it does to the body, what they're looking at is what happens to our body, right, internally, when we go 12 or more hours without having any significant amount of calories or anything to drink in terms of dry fasting, right? So 12 hours. That's the most important thing for you to remember. 12 hours is the minimum. So why 12 hours? What happens in our body after 12 hours? What happens is our body depletes the glycogen in our liver and our insulin level lowers. So this is class, guys. First thing that you need to know, and I might quiz you on this later in a later live, right? First thing that you need to know, what is it that triggers all of the beneficial physiological effects of fasting? That is your insulin level lowering, right? One of the biggest misconceptions about fasting is that people lose weight or get healthier because they are decreasing the amount of calories that they're eating. That's actually not how fasting works. The reason why it benefits us on a physiological basis is because it lowers our abdominal hormone, which is insulin, and that triggers a series of beneficial effects. Right? So this is the second thing. So this is a big misconception. Once you understand this, you're probably going to be more educated about the physiological effects of fasting than most people. So fasting does not work because you are decreasing calories. We've actually researched this. There are studies where they've done it in mice. They've also done it in humans. Actually, people having the exact same amount of calories, the exact same amount of macronutrients in a timed eating window versus grazing throughout the day. And every single time the research is done, restricting to a timed window, doing intermittent fasting, even eating the same amount of calories and the same amount of macronutrients, there are physiological benefits. So that is really, really important for you to understand. So again, 12-hour window. What happens after that 12-hour window? Glycogen is depleted out the liver. Insulin level lowers, right? Insulin is your domino hormone. All right, if you've seen any of my lives, you know that I say insulin is the domino hormone, right? At this point, if anybody runs into me and they say domino, I'm going to say insulin. If I say insulin, you say domino, right? So that's going to be our little inside, right? Everybody in our tribe. Domino, insulin, domino, right? So that's going to be our little inside. Why is insulin a domino hormone? Insulin is a domino hormone because where your insulin level is, whether it's high or low, it triggers over a dozen metabolic processes. And it triggers your cells to actually act and react in a very different manner. So insulin, and knowing how what you're eating and how you're moving when you're eating, when you're not eating, how all of that affects your insulin level is going to give you such an insight into taking control of your health. All right. So what are some of the benefits that happens when we actually engage in intermittent fasting, right? Oh, no, this is live, so I can go back, right? Before we talk about the benefits, let's talk a little bit about what are the different types of intermittent fasting, right? So there are pretty much 5 different ways in which people intermittent fast, the most common ways, and also ways in which research has been done around fasting. So we talked about 12 hours, right? 12 hours is glycogen, your glycogen lower. What you should know about a 12-hour fast is that that is actually the standard in order for you to achieve a healthy lifestyle and to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So even if you are an athlete or you're a marathon runner or your weight is great, your body fat is great, you have no pre-existing conditions, and all I want to do is maintain my healthy lifestyle, you should still be doing a 12-12 eating schedule. You should not be eating more than 12 hours in your day. You should always take a 12-hour break, right? That is kind of the minimum, right? So even if somebody came to me and they were like, I don't want to lose weight. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. I'm good. I'm great. And, so what do I do? At very minimum, you need 12 hours. All right. So that's for health. Now, the most common way in which people do intermittent fasting is doing a 16-hour fast, right? And then an 8-hour eating window. This is the 16-8 is the most common when you read about intermittent fasting anywhere on Al Gore's internet. You will find people talking about 16-8. Is this a magic number? Not really. The reason why it's the most common is because it's the easiest for people to do, right? Most people can stop eating at 8 p.m. and skip breakfast. I just have some black coffee and then eat a meal at 12 noon. Skipping breakfast is easy for people. So it actually extends the benefits of that lowered insulin level, right? Because remember, that is the goal. The goal isn't about how long we can go without eating calories. The goal is not how long can we starve ourselves. The goal is how long can we keep our insulin level low so that all of the magic can happen, right? Lowered insulin is the magic happening. So 16-8 is really, really common, certainly something that you can do on a daily basis, right? Most people can tolerate it with very little side effects. The next level of fast is a 24. So I want to do 2 things here. So it's a play on words, so you got to listen. 24, 20 hours of fast, 4-hour eating window, or 24, fasting for 24 hours, right? This is the top of what is considered intermittent fasting before we convert over into extended fast. So This is another point. Ding, ding, ding. Another question for the test, right? What is the difference between standard intermittent fasting and extended fast? That would be the 24-hour mark. Really important. All right. So, who is a 24 or 24-hour fast appropriate for? This is actually the best fast for people looking to lose weight, right? So when women join my program, one of the things that we do as a standard is 2 non-consecutive days of 20-hour fasting. Why? Because when the research looked at fasting and lipolysis specifically, lipolysis is the technical word of how your body breaks down fat cells, right? So think of lipolysis as fat burn, right? For lack of a better term. When the study looked at fasting and specifically looked at fat burn, they saw that between hours 18 and 24, there was a huge spike in breakdown of fat cells. So think about it for a second. Hour 12, the fast starts. One of the effects of lowered insulin is you increase fat burn, right? So that whole idea of, oh, if we don't eat every 3 to 4 hours, then our metabolism is going to slow down. The research literally shows the opposite effect. Insulin lowers. Now you're starting to burn more fat, and it goes up very gradually. And then when it gets to hour 18, there's a spike and it really increases. But at hour 24, it starts to level off again. So we learned 2 things from this type of research. Number 1, there is a sweet spot for fat loss between hours 18 and 24. That's the first thing that we learned. The second thing that we learned, because it actually looked at fat burn over a 36-hour period, is that more is not better. You don't burn significantly more calories because you're doing a 3-day fast. So we're going to get to 3-day fast, and the purpose of that definitely is not fat burn. When you do that 20-hour fast, you're taking advantage of that huge spike in fat burn, or a 24-hour fast. Now, one of the things that I warn my clients about is this is not one of those things where science and practicality always meet up, right? So theoretically, could you do a 20-hour fast every single day? Theoretically, yeah, that would work. But in my experience, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, it is not practical for most people long term, right? The idea of, and this is also a very popular thing on the internet, OMAD, right? 1 meal a day, right? The idea is theoretically sound. And if you can do it and be very specific on making sure that you're getting all of your nutrients in and all of your calories in, then theoretically it would work. But on a practical level, I have found that when most women do this, eventually they actually become malnourished. And here's why. One of the effects of fasting, one of the effects of lowering your insulin level is actually your leptin and ghrelin hormones also begin to adjust, right? Your leptin and ghrelin levels are the hormones that tell you that you're hungry and the hormones that tell you that you're full. Well, leptin is going to be a direct response to that insulin, right? So most of the time, for example, if people are insulin resistant, then they will also start being leptin resistant. That means leptin is a hormone that's produced that tells your brain you're full, but your brain doesn't get that signal. And so your brain is resisting the leptin, right? The same way that your body can resist insulin, your brain can resist the leptin. So you're eating and you should be done and you should feel full, but you don't, right? That's those cravings. That's those, I feel like I can eat all of the entire bag of cookies instead of just one, right? All of that. Well, sometimes that can actually work too well. So this is kind of like a side note warning of intermittent fasting. Your leptin levels can actually work too well, and you're not hungry. So when you go to sit down to eat after 20 hours of fasting or 24 hours of fasting, you're eating a really small amount and you're not getting your nutrients in, right? This is what happens on a practical level. So theoretically, yes, it works. Practically, I personally don't recommend it. I tell my clients do 2 non-consecutive days and then just stick to the 16 hours for the other days, right? So that way we know that you are getting your nutrients in, because that's the most important thing, right? We don't create long-lasting weight loss or health by starving ourselves. We do not want to starve ourselves. So the 24 or the 24-hour fast is the weight loss fast, 2 non-consecutive days. Now, anything beyond 24 hours, we consider that extended fasting, right? There has been limited studies, so we're talking like less than 20, on a 3-day fast, on a 7-day fast, on people doing a 10-day fast, right? There's limited studies on this. We don't have any research on what happens if you go 30 days fasting, right? There's no research on that. But what we do know from people who go on extended, very low calorie diets is that when you do that for more than 30 days, right? We've looked at studies of people doing this for longer than 30 days. We know that you can permanently damage your metabolism, which means your metabolism will actually slow down if you go 30, 60, 90 consecutive days with only water. So even though there's a trend that I see, unfortunately, on social media about these only water fasts for 90 days, for a year, that actually works against you, and I do not recommend it. All right. So what I would recommend is that you not do a 30-day water fast, right? That is not, the research shows us everything about that backfires later on. Okay, so those are the different types of fasts. So remember, anything more than 24 hours is considered an extended fast. Okay, so that's category 1. So category 2 is wet fasting versus dry fasting. All right, we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to get into the Ramadan stuff, right? So wet fasting is when you take in water, black coffee, black and green teas only during your fasting hours. Why only these things? This is important because a lot of people mess this up when they try to fast, right? Because of the internet, or social media sometimes works against us, right? What that means is, remember, so we're going to always go back to that insulin, right? Remember, the purpose of the fast is to keep your insulin level low. That is when the magic happens. That's when that leptin and ghrelin start shifting. That's when the inflammation comes down. That's when all of the good stuff starts to happen. Well, if you do a juice fast, you drink juice while you're in your fasting hours, insulin level is rising. None of the good stuff is happening, right? If you say, you know what, I'm just going to eat raw fruits, insulin level is rising. None of the good stuff is happening to you. So it's really important that we keep our insulin level low. We know that water does not raise insulin level. Green tea does not raise insulin level. Black coffee does not raise insulin level, right? As long as you keep it less than 2 to 3 cups a day. That's just a little side note. You don't want to drink a pot of coffee. So those are the things that are allowed during your fasting hours, okay? Now, Ramadan is what's considered dry fasting. Dry fasting is when you don't have anything to drink or anything to eat during your fasting hours. So this is where the shift happens. the shift really happens. So here's a couple of things about fasting and Ramadan and about the research on fasting. So the awesome part of looking up research on fasting is most of the research are actually done on Muslims because we are the perfect fasting test subjects. Because the most difficult part of researching fasting is getting people to stick to it. Muslims are going to stick to it, research or no research. So they have guaranteed compliance. Hey, works out because now we have lots of information. So what are some of the things that happens when you are fasting? So the first thing that happens when you are fasting is your insulin level lowers. Once your insulin level lowers, then your inflammation markers lower, right? So if you are a person with an autoimmune disease, a person with arthritis, or any other inflammatory bowel disease, fasting has been shown in research to benefit the symptoms of all of inflammation related illnesses. So specifically those three things, right? So your inflammation markers. When we talk about inflammation markers, we're talking about C-reactive proteins, we're talking about TNFs, we're talking about the inflammation markers that show that it is related to things like cancer and Alzheimer's and IBS and diabetes and diabetes and high blood pressure are both associated with inflammation markers. All of the symptoms of those things actually improve. So inflammation is a decrease in inflammation is one of the physiological benefits of fasting. And remember earlier where we talked about the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being intertwined? Fasting also improves your brain, mental well-being, right? I told you they were all connected. They're all intertwined. Fasting puts it all in there. So they actually have done studies on Muslims during Ramadan and looked at neurotrophins called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors, right? BDNF are proteins that actually improve memory and learning, increase brain plasticity, increase the creation of new neurons, and protects the brain against degeneration of brain cells. So here is a little Muslim hack. Because of the benefit of BDNF while you're fasting, Ramadan is actually the perfect time for you to start memorizing Quran or learning your hadiths or your fiqh, because you're actually going to absorb all of that better because of the increase in BDNF, right? So here's a study, another study. They took 22 women and men, right? 22 women and 7 men who were fasting Ramadan. So this is a research study that was actually done on Muslims during Ramadan. And they wanted to find out how the plasma levels of BDNF and serotonin were increasing during Ramadan. So one, serotonin is an important neurotransmitter in the human body. It helps to regulate mood, social behavior, appetite, digestion, sleep, memory, sexual function and desire. And the lack of serotonin can actually cause depression and anxiety. Now, this actually is starting to all come together. I want you to think about this and think about how good we feel in Ramadan, right? Allah actually designed it in a way for us to actually feel good and love to be with our community during this time, right? Serotonin actually increases in our brain when we are fasting. It makes us want to love one another. It makes us happy to be around one another, right? Not just the barakah, but like just our physiological, Allah has gathered us together in a way that surpasses anything else. physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Well, another thing that fasting does in the brain is that it actually increases NGF, which is which actually helps to protect the nerve cells of the brain, right? So, this is really, really important because it creates pathways between brain cells and it regulates the life cycle of the neurons. So, when you have too much, when you don't have enough NGF, right? Those neurons and those pathways are not regulated. They can't connect as easily, right? So, memory problems, mood issues, all of that. And all of this is the benefits of dry fasting, right? So, it helps us, remember, decrease inflammation. It helps to improve our brain, our memory, our mood. But in addition to that, it also improves our cholesterol levels. Like, I'm mentioning the things that plague just about every society, right? We have so many people with high cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, especially since the pandemic, lots of issues with mental health and mood disorders. This is our remedy, like straight from Allah. This is our remedy, right? So when they looked at fasting, they looked at it actually increases HDL and lowers LDL. And so here is another thing that I want to put as a side. We're going to talk about nutrition, right? So I think nutrition is for next week. We're going to talk about nutrition. But the very fascinating part of this for me is when they do these research studies on Muslims during Ramadan. Now, we know we do not eat the healthiest during Ramadan, right? Even if you eat healthy all year long, Ramadan, you're going to have a little bit more everything. Ramadan, you're going to have a little bit more desserts. You're going to have a little bit bigger serving of this and serving of that, despite not even worried about what people are eating. The benefits still occur. How wonderful is that? Despite what now, I'm not saying eat anything you want during Ramadan. Of course, we can increase these benefits if we actually eat with more intention and we actually change the way that we eat. We can definitely improve on all of these results, inshallah. But when they do the research, they aren't looking at what people are eating. They're only looking at when they are eating. So that's a really important thing for you to take note of, right? So it's going to improve your cholesterol ratio. LDL lowers, HDL rises, right? All of those things are really, really important, right? So one research study showed, right? So here's interesting thing about the study. Again, research study on Muslims during Ramadan, right? One research study showed that people fasting in Morocco had a significant reduction in total cholesterol and triglycerides, even 1 month after Ramadan ended. Yet another study showed that people in Kuwait had no significant change in cholesterol or triglyceride, right? So here is the what you eat matters part, all right? So if we look at the difference in these two population, what we see is a cultural difference. Whereas in Morocco, they had a higher consumption of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids, while the average Kuwaiti diet is more saturated fats, right? So that is when the what you eat is going to start affecting how beneficial your fast is on a physiological basis, right? So, and just as a side note, because I know someone is going to ask, oh, can you actually give us the research study? I actually wrote an entire ebook and I'm actually reading from it as I'm doing this live. And all of the links to all of the research is inside of the ebook. You can go to ramadanblueprint.com, Download the entire thing, and all of the research links are in there. So now that is when what you eat is going to matter, right? So the next thing that fasting do, I'm going to talk about two other benefits of fasting. That domino hormone, insulin. Remember, we talked about how important it is to understand how insulin is affecting your body on a physiological level. The most significant thing that fasting does, whether it's a wet fast or dry fast, is it lowers your insulin level. Diabetes is at epidemic proportions, not just in the United States of America where I live, but worldwide. The World Health Organization made it an endemic way before COVID was a thing, right? When we talk about pandemics and endemics, it was already at that status way before COVID was a thing. COVID just made the words really popular. We have to learn how to reverse insulin resistance. And fasting is a tool in that toolbox, right? So one of the things that fasting does is it gives your insulin a rest, right? It gives it a rest. It lowers insulin levels. Once you can lower insulin level, it allows your body to start repairing itself from insulin resistance and becoming more insulin sensitive, right? So insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity, they're opposite sides of the same coin. So just in case you aren't sure what each one of them mean, when you have insulin sensitivity, that means that your body can process insulin more effectively. When you have insulin resistance, that means you do not have insulin sensitivity and your body is resisting insulin to be able to access your cells, okay? So insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance are two sides of the same coin. What fasting does is it increases insulin sensitivity, which is going to decrease your insulin resistance, right? Last thing that I want to mention, and there's many other benefits of fasting, but the last thing that I want to mention is detox, right? Detox is a pretty common term. Again, Al Gore's internet will give you a million results if you look up detox. But for us and our tribe, all right, we're talking about cellular detox. We're talking about detoxing your body in a way that accelerates your body's natural ability for it to repair, reuse, and recycle cells. So cellular detox is called autophagy, right? That means your body is taking cells and it is repairing them, right? When they look at this, this is just like, autophagy is a whole topic in itself. It's a whole separate live. But it is just so, every time I read something or watch a video, I'm just like, subhanallah, Allah really created us as these wonderful machines with every type of hikmah that we haven't even dived into the amount of hikmah in our ability to heal ourselves. Like Allah literally allowed us to heal ourselves, right? It's absolutely amazing. When you look at autophagy, the cells in our body, they literally, so think of a cell as a disc, right? So say it's like a disc, right? And as our cells age, gets a little crack in it, right? Once it continues to age, a little piece might come out. Think of like it as a broken piece. This is actually what it looks like underneath the microscope. Well, when your body, and our body has some level of autophagy on a daily basis, like we literally become incapacitated and have to go to sleep so that our insulin level can lower and our body can start repairing itself. Like literally the amount, did you know that your metabolism, meaning that all of the processes in your bodies, is actually higher when you're sleeping than when you're awake? Part of that is because your insulin level lowers. And remember, the magic happens when your insulin level lowers. Well, when you're doing when autophagy is going on, your body is literally repairing all of those cracks in the cells. Not only does it repair the cracks in the cells, but if you have a cell that's starting to break to pieces and you have another cell over here and there's a piece missing, your body will literally take the broken pieces and use them to repair the cell that has a piece missing. And if the cell is not repairable, the body will discard of that cell and then create a whole new cell in its place. Subhanallah. Like, how amazing is that? And we actually increase autophagy, the rate in which is happening when we are fasting. And here is the quote unquote new research. This happens when we do a wet fast. But when we do a dry fast, it accelerates. So Allah literally incorporated this into our deen. How much mercy is that? Subhanallah. Like, I get excited. I get excited. Told you Ramadan is my favorite time. It's my favorite time. I get excited. So when you are fasting, autophagy increases. When you're fasting in Ramadan and you're doing a dry fast, it then accelerates. Some research believes 3 times as much as when you're doing a wet fast. Absolutely amazing. Increases. The other thing that happens during a dry fast is they find that your immune system actually increases. It boosts your immune system. So you are detoxifying, and then there is a protection because the detoxification process is stress on the body, right? It is a good stress, but it's your body literally regenerating itself. And then over here, your body is like, okay, we understand that you're in stress. Now we're going to boost your metabolism, boost your immune system to make sure that you're able to create homeostasis. Subhanallah. How amazing is that? I'm going to leave you with this last thing. New research on dry fasting. Dry fasting, what we do in Ramadan. What is the thing that we are always the most concerned about? The most concerned about when we're fasting, right? Everybody is the most concerned about dehydration, right? We are most concerned about, if I don't drink water, I'm going to be dehydrated. Bruh. I'm getting excited. Okay, I'm going to calm down. I get excited. The thing that we are most concerned about is dehydration. Why? Because when you are dehydrated, your blood thickens, right? And when your blood thickens, that is one of the things that makes it harder for you to move. So you expend more energy when you have to move. But the bigger concern around that is that it becomes harder for your heart to actually pump the blood because the blood is thicker. Can you say Allahu Akbar? Can you say Allahu Akbar? Like, just trust me. Just trust me. Give me an Allahu Akbar. The research on dry fasting shows that cellular function changes, and instead of your body excreting sodium, it actually recycles it to prevent the loss of sodium and the balance of electrolytes, decreasing the chances of you becoming dehydrated. Subhanallah, I told you, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Like, Allah literally was like, you give up water from me, I'm going to protect you. When you give up something for Allah, He returns it with mercy, protection, and grace. Even something as little as water. Literally, dry fasting protects us from electrolyte imbalance, the cellular function shifts. But that's not all, because remember I said one of the issues with becoming dehydrated is that it makes your heart work harder. Well, when you are dry fasting, like we do in Ramadan, a hormone called vasopressin actually increases. And what does this hormone do? It increases blood circulation to the heart and to the brain. Subhanallah. So not only do we have an additional protection from dehydration, Allah actually says, we're going to protect every part of you, and He increases our blood circulation to help to improve the circulation of blood to our heart and our brain. This is the science and the Sunnah of fasting. Subhanallah. I get excited. I get excited. Are you excited as I am? Okay, y'all already know I love this time of year, right? Physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is intertwined. Like, this is amazing. The more that we learn about fasting, right? So when we're talking about wet fasting, people say, oh, make sure you're drinking enough water, make sure that you're having electrolytes. Yeah, that is actually more appropriate while you're doing wet fasting. And I'm not saying that you won't get dehydrated at all if you're going through the entire month of Ramadan, but Allah has given us a protection. He has literally given us a protection from the things that we worry about the most. And it's just another example of just have tawakkul. Know that Allah got you. He got you. No matter what He's asking us to do, we have to trust in Him, in His design. He made us He gave us this body as a machine to worship Him. And He designed it in a way for us to use it to worship Him by taking nothing away from us. And in fact, increasing us and preserving our health and well-being. This is the science and the Sunnah of food, faith, and fitness. So excited to be having these talks with you every Tuesday. Yes, the lives will be saved. You can share them. You can come back to them. Very, very excited. So I got calmed down. I'm going to have to go get me some chamomile tea or something because I'm just too excited right now. I'm just too excited right now. All right. But that is what I wanted to share with you today. So inshallah, every Tuesday, we are going to tackle a new topic, right? So keeping all of these things in mind, I want you to remember next Tuesday, we're specifically talking about nutrition, right? We're talking about, now we know we actually have a protection against dehydration. What does that mean in terms of what we need to eat? Now we know that one of the benefits of fasting and how it works is that it lowers insulin level. How do we need to eat in order to maximize that, right? And then the week after that, we're going to talk about fitness, right? Do you have the energy to work out during Ramadan? Do you need the energy to work out during Ramadan? Do we have any physiological effects of fasting and workouts? We're going to talk about all of that. All right, so I had a good time today. I really did, because this is my favorite time of year. I get hyped and all of this. Yeah, it just all works out for me, okay? So inshallah, I will talk to you guys next week. Have an awesome, awesome rest of your week. Feel free to share this video, save the video, come back and watch it. We talked about a lot today, so inshallah, it will be beneficial for you as we go into our Ramadan countdown, 30 days. Here we come. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.